In this full pipeline project, we're going to go from this in Photoshop, turning it into a high poly and a low poly model in Maya, texturing in Substance, and getting that object into Unreal Engine to see how it looks live. Alright, so the first step will be looking at some references of some Swiss cheese wedges. So let's jump into Google Images, we'll tap that in. And we get a lot of examples here. The kind that I want is just like this. You've got the Swiss cheese with a wax coating on the outside. And I'm just going to pop that into Pure Ref here. Pure Ref is just a little, it's kind of like you can make a little art diary from it. I recommend downloading Pure Ref. Let's have a look at some other good examples here. Like I said, I'm after one with that wax coating. And this one here it's virtually the same, but I'll grab that as well. Alright. Now, even though we have these references, I do want to make a concept, and I do recommend always just having a quick draw. So I'll make a new file. I like to just stick with a 2K file. Doesn't mean I'm going to use the whole space. So like I said, it's good to draw this first. It'll give you an idea of some of the contours of the model. So I'll make a new layer here. And first I'm just going to start with the outline. And here's my brush settings. Just using a hard brush with a little bit of smoothing and a little bit of pressure change. So I'll be using a stylus. And I'll just start just getting confident lines, trying to get them in one stroke. I can change them later. And then I'll break these lines up a bit because our wedge has a curve. I'll probably end up spending too much time on these corners and editing these lines. The more I edit these lines, the less of that confident stroke will appear. I'm eliminating some of those good lines I started off with, but oh well, this is just a concept. So even if you have a good reference of your model, it's a good idea to make these concepts. It might give you some insight to the kind of shapes we're going to need to make in our 3D model. If you need an orthographic, you can make your own orthographic, which you can then use to model from. So an orthographic is like a front on or a side on or a top view, something that you can use for a reference when you're actually in like an image plane in Maya. I'll just draw some of these holes on the cheese. Just trying to get them down in one stroke, confident lines. And I want to put one on here. I don't want the model to just be a plain shape. I'm going to put one of these holes on the middle here to break it up. I'll just fix up some of these lines because I can't help it. I should just leave them. This takes up time. And you can do shift clicking here, so you can click one side and then hold down shift and click the other side to draw a straight line. But I think you lose some of the personality when you cheat like that. But I'll do it. But I definitely didn't need to. I'll do it again here. It may look better. Alright, so that's the outline done. You should name this layer, outline, and then I'm going to get to some of the colors. So this model probably only needs 2 different colors as a base. I'll pick a cheesy color. You can use your eyedropper tool to actually get the color from the reference. I think the hotkey is I. That didn't work. And I can't grab it off the pure ref here. I'd have to drag the actual image into Photoshop. So I won't worry about that. I'll just pick a color that I like. Alright, increase my brushstroke size using the square brackets. And I'll be quickly changing between B and E, brush and eraser. Doesn't matter if you don't keep within the lines here. I can just erase it. But it's all good practice. And that's what a big part of this is. You might not think that you're a great drawer, and just starting to draw every concept before your 3D model is just a quick little fun way to start improving their skills. So this time I'll do the outline and then I'll just fill in using the bucket tool. Alright, fill it in. And so that's basically the colors done. Once I'm happy with the colors, I'm just going to make 2 shades. So I'll do a light and a dark. So it's just going to be a 3-tone concept. And I'll do that on another layer. I'll call this darks. I'll change the mode of this to multiply. So that means if you apply the same color to itself, it's going to be darkening, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm just using the same color of the cheese. I'll fill in these holes, little air pockets. Now I'm going to just add a 3rd dimension to this hole, so you can it just makes it a bit more clearer what that is. And that'll allow me to then put a darker shade on the top of this where light won't hit it. And now I'll do some of the shadows on the wax. So I'll just do the entire back area. When you're doing shading, just pick an area that you want the light to be. So I'm imagining the light's on the right. And so the left side of this model will just have darker tones. Give this concept some dimensions so it doesn't look so flat. That looks good. I'll make a lights layer now. Lights layer, similar concept, but instead of multiply, we'll use screen. And that's going to have the opposite effect. You can change your color a little bit, but yeah. You apply the same color to itself, it's going to be increasing its brightness. And so I'm going to do the left side of these holes because the left side will be getting hit by the light a little bit. And so I'll just do just put a big circle in them and then eat it away. And then for the wax, I imagine the wax is, and I'll just use the same color. The wax will be a bit more glossy than the actual cheese part. So I'm gonna use the light a bit more liberally. Just add a little bit to the right side of the cheese as well. Yep, that looks okay. And then you can get rid of your outline. You can clean this up a bit. Because I may or may not use the outlined version. I think sometimes it looks good without the lines. Without the lines, I'm just going to edit away to straighten up this model a bit. So I'm just working out which layer that I've filled these in on. Straighten up the front. Might need to put a bit of work into this front air pocket. Might add a bit of gloss along the edge here just to make it more clear. And then I'll just clean up some of these other areas. But this is basically done. I'm just being pedantic now. I don't have to fix these up. The idea is already there. It gets the point across. But I might as well. Alright, that'll do. So now I'm going to just make a outside outline only version. So I'll keep the border line and I'll just delete the rest. I think this can look better. Looks like kind of like clip art. Alright, so now I've got those two versions, whichever one I want to use. And then I'm happy with this, so I want to merge these layers together, but before I do that, I should duplicate them. Alright, so I've got all those copies, and now I can just flatten this layer. So I've got one layer with everything. And this will be the final result. I can hide the rest. You see, I don't even have the background, so this can be exported with transparency. So just export that layer. All these settings should be fine. I'll chuck it in this cheese folder that I made. I'll just put it here in the cheese master folder. I'll call this one cheese B, because I've already got one. Alright, so over into Maya now. First thing I'll do is set my project. Good naming conventions. Just going to chuck it on the desktop. And I'll grab that concept that I just made and chuck it in the images folder of the new Maya project. Then I can save this scene just so I can hit Control S, the row out. So I'll start with a cube. Then I'll use target world to just turn this into a triangle shape. And then I'll move that edge that is now merged to the origin and stretch it out. So it looks like a cheese wedge. Maybe one more. Yep. Now the first thing, I'm just going to make it a bit smaller, and then I'm going to work on getting that contour at the back so the cheese wedge is rounded on one side, like it was cut out of the cylinder shape. So that should be enough there. Then I'll bevel that to get us the curve. And then I'll just adjust this until I think that all the faces are about even. Okay. Now I need to fix up this topology. I want these all to be quads. 3 on each side. And then I'm going to connect the two first ones. Which will allow me to connect up this middle one. That's holding down Control and Shift to get that perfect straight edge while using the multi-cut tool. Okay, and then I don't think I'll be able to split these two perfectly using that method, using Control and Shift, so I might remake these. I'll use a different tool instead of the multi-cut. I'll use the insert edge loop. Go to the settings for that, make sure it's only going to insert 2, and then that's what I want. 1 on each side, and then I can just finish the rest with the multi-cut tool again. Alright, that's the top and the bottom. So this is all quads now. Okay, happy with that. Alright, now let's get that rounded shape. Just mess with this till I'm happy with it. It's important here when you're adding bevels to always use an even amount of segments. So you always, it's much easier to turn it into quads that way. Because now we have one big n-gon on each side. I did forget to bring the reference in. I might as well bring it in now. Just so we can look at it while we're modeling. I didn't make an orthographic, but I at least made something that I can kind of just look at. And it was a transparent image, so it's chilling over there. All right, and actually before I fix up the n-gon at the back, I do want that, looking at the concept, I want this big cut out of the front. So using a platonic solid, changing it to cube, turning up the subdivisions to 2, we get a quadratic sphere. And I don't want to push this too far back where the middle of that sphere cuts in. This should be good. So we'll give that a try using Boolean difference, and that looks pretty good. Delete the history so it bakes in. Okay. Happy with that. Now let's start making some decisions to turn this all into quads. I'll turn symmetry on. Yep, so for me, I'm using that axis. So these vertical ones I'll just keep vertical, but then the horizontal ones, I'll take advantage of this new cutout. This should be okay. Might get a slither at the end there, which I might adjust. Just a little bit now. I'll smooth these edges out later. And this doesn't have to be perfect. That'll give me enough room for the next one at least. And the bottom will be a bit easier because I moved my cutout higher up on the model. And we do have some extra vertices on this cutout here, which I'll just select them now with symmetry on, and I'll just delete these. Happy with that now. Alright, and then the rest of these that we need, I can just add in. Multicut tool might not work here because I need 5, so I'll use the insert edge loop tool again. Change it to 5. Much better. Each one's even. And then just join them with symmetry on, of course. Okay. I'm just going to use the cleanup tool just so it only selects them, turn on the n-gon, and then I hit apply. If no faces are selected, then we have no n-gons. Perfect. Alright, I'm going to take advantage of the quad tools, the quad draw tools relax feature, holding down shift and right click to relax these out. This wasn't really necessary, and it may actually end up being uglier, but at least we're averaging out these faces. But I just don't want to go too far to the left or to the borders of the model, because then it's going to actually change our hard edges. Like so. So don't do that. That'll do. Just checking my work. Happy with that. Alright, so I guess the low poly version of this is finished. Let's name it. And duplicate that. And create a high poly version. Hide the low poly version, so we're just looking at the high poly. Now I just want to bevel the hard edges on this model. So I've made the bevel node, and then I go to the attributes of the bevel, turn on hard edges, and now it's only beveling hard edges only. And then I'll turn chamfer off, just so we're making some holding edges before we smooth this. Test the smooth. And that looks a bit funky. We might have beveled too much. Yeah, so we've got n-gons here. We didn't want to bevel those extra edges, so instead of hard edges, just go edges by angle. Kind of the same thing. That's much better. And then I'll go back to the smooth node that we made and turn it up. Much better, all quads. So we have a much smoother version of our model now. Later on we'll bake this in Substance. I don't like how much this corner's getting cut out, so I just need to turn down the fraction on the bevel. Much better. Okay, we'll create some more of those cuboid spheres using the platonic solids. We're going to cut out some of the air holes in this Swiss cheese now, on the high poly version only. And I'm just going to adjust this just so we're using slightly less than half of the sphere. Duplicate that with Control D, adjust the position, adjust the size, and make a bunch of these. And every time I need to reposition this, I'm doing just less than half of the sphere. Make another one. Just doing one side of the model for the moment. If you're following along, make as many or as little as you like. You don't have to stick to the reference that we made in the concept, at least for this model anyway. Alright. I'll grab all the ones I made on that side and combine them so it becomes one object, which will just make it easier to mirror to the other side. Before I mirror, I need to change the origin using pressing D and then turning on grid lock, moving that to the middle, hitting mirror, and then finding the right axis and direction. Okay, and then I want to separate those again so I can select them individually, and I'll just keep these the same size, but I'll move them around. And because I've done it the way I have, I can't use that method, so that's fine. Just keep moving in world axis. Turn that off. Same thing, using slightly less than half of the spheres. I don't have to readjust the size, I can just keep them. These two I might make a double air pocket. And I'll make some more on this side. Why not? One more in the corner here. Okay. Now we can merge all these back together. Delete the history of that, so it just becomes one object again. And now delete the history on the cheese. Inspect it and select the cheese, then select the spheres and do Boolean difference A take away B. Delete the history, and we have our air pockets baked into our mesh. So that's the high poly version finished. And now on the low poly, we just need to address UVs. So bring up my UV window here, delete the ones that we get given, and create a new fresh set of UVs. And we should be able to auto seams. Auto seams just going to cut out along all the hard seams. Yep, along the hard edges. And then grab all our shells and unfold. And then we'll just lay it out and take a look. Okay. Using the auto way, we're definitely not using efficient UV space. So we can adjust that manually. Now let's unfold this. Actually, I'm getting these extra, those hard edges I had earlier that I noticed on the high poly model. We don't want those to be hard edges, so let's just redo our hard and soft edges, and then let's remake those UVs. So delete them, create another fresh one, use the auto seams again, and then unfold. Much better. I've done something silly here. I think I just didn't have the whole model selected when I hit unfold. That's much better. Okay, 4 islands. I want these to... Just need to turn symmetry off. I want these two to be the same direction. So get it roughly there. This one's going to be angled, so we're using much more UV space. And lay that out. Okay. Much better. That should be UVs done. Ready to go. Alright, delete all history. Now this still needs material. Just give it a standard surface. Give it a name. The high poly version doesn't need UVs or a material, only the low poly. We should be ready to export this now. So export selection, I'm just gonna, this will automatically go into our project file. We'll need to export the high poly version as well. And we should be ready to head over into Substance. Alright, in Substance now, let's make a new project. Select our file here, and then the rest of these will remain the same. I'm going to use 2K. Okay. Alright, so this is our model. Whenever we bring in a model into Substance, first thing we need to do is bake mesh maps. We don't need IDs. And we need to bring our high poly model in. Hit this little icon, bring in the high poly. And then we need to just, I'll turn this all the way down and just adjust it until there's no more red faces for the max frontal distance. And then the max rear distance, we're just going to turn it up and this should be okay. Turn on some anti-aliasing and hit bake. Alright, great. So the details of the high poly have now been baked into the texture of the low poly. So we're done with the high poly version now. Alright, go back to your layer stack. We'll make a folder for the wax. And so all the materials we'll use for the wax will go in there. But let's do our overall base texture first. We need a cheesy color. So I've just made a new fill layer. Set the color to a yellowy color. And we can take a look at our concept again, just to get an idea. So this is what we're after. Okay. Add a bit more saturation to that. Happy with that. Let's do the base wax texture as well. But we need a mask on our wax texture. So I like to, when I'm changing masks, I like to set the fill layer to just red so we can see what the mask is doing. Add a black mask to the folder, then add a paint stack to the mask. Now we're going to paint this in. Just need to change the paint mode to UVs only, and then go ahead and paint away. I don't plan on keeping this red, it's just so I can clearly see what the mask is doing. I'm painting the mask right now, not the actual colored layer. So everything in this folder will now only apply to that mask there. And I do like to blur this a little bit. It's a bit harsh when it's super sharp, like that. So I'll just add a little bit of blur so it blends in nicely. Alright, now that we know the mask is working, we can give it a more of that waxy color. Right now we're just making the base layers. No details just yet. Now we can add a detail layer. Naming each layer. So this is just wax variation. Again, change it to red so I can adjust the mask on the fill layer. Add a fill to the mask. Change the fill to this noise. This one usually works out well for the wax, which is ridge noise fractal. And then edit the settings in here till we're happy. I want to see what the height is doing now, so I'll turn that on. And I can change the color now too. Just so we're getting some variation in our color, and we're getting that variation on the height of the wax. And the wax will be glossier than the cheese, so I'll set that to about half, and then I'll set the roughness on the actual cheese layer a lot higher, I should say. That might be a bit too much height, so I'll turn it down to 0.1. And then let's add a filter to the mask. I'm going to add warp. This kind of just makes it look a little bit more flaky. So the warp is just modifying the layer below it. Just that scale a bit. Give it a bit more height now. Oh, too much. Okay. That looks okay. So now let's add some variation to the cheese itself. Again, I'll change it to red, then I'll add a black layer. A black mask, I mean. Then add a fill to the mask. And on this one, we'll add the simplex noise. I just want to add more like micro details. So we've got the large air pockets that we made on the high poly model. On this layer, we're going to make a bunch of smaller holes. So we're just adjusting the height, contrast 0, scale like so, and then just modify the balance. Turn the height up a bit more. Okay, so we're getting some little air pockets now. It's working on both sides. Add another variation layer. I want some more detail. Generally, the more detail you add, the more realistic you get. And this, what I'm thinking of doing here, might not be perfect realism, but I just want to add some micro variation to get the point across that this cheese might have a little bit of grit to it. So just using a Perlin noise, setting the scale. So this noise is just very speckly. And we're just adjusting the height just ever so slightly. That might still be too much. It's too little, can barely see it. Okay. That looks good. So we're just adding some grit to it. Now I kind of want one more layer to darken the borders of the cheese, kind of like it's going a little bit stale. So I'll call this layer stale edges. On this one, we're just going to be increasing the roughness and adjusting the color a little bit. So again, add another black mask. This time we'll add a generator and we'll use the curvature generator. So you can see how that's working. Maybe blur it a little bit. It's okay. Adjust the balance. Okay, and now I'm getting a bit of that curvature on the front, so I'm going to adjust that. I'll add a paint effect on top of this so we can clean up that curvature a bit. Change it to multiply. And then I was on eraser still. Press 1 to go to brush. We're going to set this to 0, and then we should be able to get rid of some of the curvature here. So this layer is multiplying the layer below it, and we're using a value of 0. Anything multiplied by 0 is 0, effectively eliminating the parts that we paint on. And I've accidentally hit this edge here, so I just need to Control Z. There we go. I'll do it again. Maybe a bit easier in the UV window. Yeah, that's much easier. Eliminate the parts we don't need. Okay, now again I was using red so I could clearly see what it was doing, but we don't want it to stay red. Let's just make that a darker yellow. And we can change that to multiply too. Okay, that's looking pretty good. These are all my layers here. Wasn't too hard. We can export this now. We should save this project first, and I'll save it in that same folder. I made a master cheese folder. I'll just chuck it in here, but I will just call it SPP, Substance Painter. Now, so we go to export textures. I will just leave the template as is. You can use a template if you wish, but I'm happy with this. It's just going to export every mask that I've used. And I will export it directly into my Maya folder. I'll just make a textures folder and I'll export them all into there. All right, so these are all the layers we've got. Now real quickly, my micro air pockets layer is affecting the wax. So to fix that, I'm going to change the settings to height and then change the wax layer to normal. And then we just need to re-export that. So that gets rid of the air pockets out of the wax. Now heading over to Unreal, we're just going to make a blank project. And the game's templates here, we've just got blank, change the quality preset to scalable, set the project to name, make sure it's in the correct location as well, which I'm going to put it in my master cheese folder and create. Because it's a blank project, this should be really quickly. Should load real quickly. Okay, so we're chucked into the default level here. Let's do our folders first. I like a upper folder that's the same name as the project. Then we'll do an art folder and a maps folder. We need a new map. Let's call this map. Cheese display is good. Open that up. Yes, save. Now we need some lighting so we can see what we're doing. Go to the environmental light mixer here. Just hit every button. Okay, now we need a shape for our cheese to sit on. Let's just use a cube. This cube is hurting my eyes, so let's make a material for it. Go into the art folder, make a new material. I'll just make it gray. Open that up. Dock it in. Just make it a bit darker gray and set the roughness to 1. Save that. Now we can just drag that layer onto the cube. Much better. Okay, in this art folder, which is where we're just going to chuck everything, let's import our model and textures, which is just all in the Maya folder here. We just need the low poly. We don't need the high poly. Now I'll probably turn off a couple things here. We don't want it to create a material. The others I'll just leave on, they won't do anything. And don't import that either. Okay, import it in. So we just got the model, perfect. Drag it in, have a look at it. Yep, that's good. We'll drag it above the cube, then hit end on the keyboard. So it puts it on the object below it. Now we can import our textures as well, which I made a textures folder for. We just want base color, shouldn't need metallic. We'll bring in the normal, the roughness, the base color, and we'll bring in AO. Why not? Ambient occlusion. Okay, bring those in. We need a material for those. Let's make a cheese material. Open that up and drag all these textures in. So this is, we'll just neaten this up. These kind of connect how you'd expect. Base color into base color, normal into normal. And that's the roughness there, roughness into roughness. Save that, just give a look at that. See how that worked out. Yep, there we go. Just drag it onto the object in the scene. Let's take a look at him. That looks great. Okay, so you could call that done, but I will adjust the lighting here and maybe adjust the material a little bit more. We've got that AO I didn't use yet. So AO using Lumen doesn't really do anything, so I can't just plug that into the AO socket. So instead, I'll just make a parameter to adjust the AO manually into the color. Turn that into a parameter. So we're going to multiply the color by the ambient occlusion, and then we want a lerp node so we can choose how much of the AO version is going in. So we'll plug the normal color into A, the AO version into B, and our new parameter into the alpha. Then plug the lerp node into the base color. So 0 means it's going to use the A, and 1 means it'll use B. I'll do the same with the roughness, so we can multiply the roughness, increase it or lower it. Roughness into A, this parameter into B, and plug that in. Default value of 1 means it's doing nothing for now. And so we can update this live. We'll need a material instance. So right click your material, create material instance. I like to use the mi prefix for instances. Now we just want to look at the material instance while we're looking at the model in the scene. Let's turn on our parameter and we can see what it's doing now. So this is what the AO is doing. I'll just use half of it, and then we can increase or lower the roughness now too. This wouldn't have worked if we just used the material. You have to make an instance for it to update live. Inspect that. And adjust it. I'll just 1.5 looks good. That happens a lot in Unreal. Things are usually glossier, and we're finished.